on the call, but keep an eye there to make sure you are muted, which would be great. So welcome. We have a little bit different topic today. Some of the standard ones we've talked about. So we're going to be talking about business etiquette, which is really interesting. I talk about business etiquette. I guess I just don't call it business etiquette. When I work with clients, things that they should be doing, shouldn't be doing, what are the things that are sort of standards and norms today, because that's an evolving piece. So I'm kind of curious to see as we go through the session today and next time in a few weeks to see what you think, because we'll talk about ethics and we'll talk about etiquette, and there is a variation in the two. So I'm curious to see sometimes as they put a statement up, some of them are a little bit on the edge. So I'll be curious to see what you think, if you think it's something that is a standard or if it's more specific to certain people. So we'll have to try it out and see where it goes. I don't generally put all these topics on in one presentation, so it'll be kind of fun to see what you guys think. All right, so with regard to, well, actually, I'll give you a little story first. I was at a session, not a session, it was the preamble before a session, and I was chatting with a couple leaders, and one of the leaders was talking about something serious that was going on at work within the team, and it was really intense with, so three of us, and it was quite intense. And we had someone just come up, they came in with their coffee or whatever, and they came right up and just sort of pushed themselves in and said, "Hey, how's it going?" And, oh, we're getting some feedback there. If you can make sure you're on mute, folks. And they interjected them and basically pulled the person away. So the person who was actually trying to have the conversation and was having the difficulties kind of looked at me, and the eyes kind of bulged, like, really? And it was something that really stuck out. And I thought, wow, how inappropriate that is. And again, you know, what do you guys think? Is that an inappropriate thing to do? Is it inappropriate just to interject yourself in? So that's the question. These are the things that we're going to be talking about. Some standard stuff, some stuff that you think about, and some things that you may not think about. So what is ethics, though? What is etiquette and what is ethics? So what's the difference in the two? We're going to talk about that first. Why do we really care about this? Like, what's it really all about? And how we do it. So what does it mean? Because let's face it, there's going to be times when all of us are going to probably step over a line. We're probably going to do something that we shouldn't do. That's normal protocol in any society, right? And again, it's different here. We'll talk a little bit about, I'll throw out a few interesting stories in the next call around how it works elsewhere. But if we look at it from an Atlantic Canadian perspective, we're going to stick within that sort of societal norm as we're going through this. But again, I'm going to push, hopefully, some of you might get your buttons pushed a little bit like, I don't think that's wrong. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts as we go through it. So what is etiquette? So if you look at Business Dictionary, which is where a lot of people go when we talk about business terms or business behaviors. So expected behaviors and expectations, excuse me, for individual actions within society, a group, or class. In terms of work, it involves treating coworkers and the employer with respect and courtesy in a way that creates a pleasant work environment for everyone. It's a little ambiguous. It's a little challenging. Respect and courtesy, what does that mean? So I got another little one that kind of crafted there. So etiquette is a set of rules indicating the proper and polite way to behave at work to get a positive response. So, but we have control over this. So I kind of added in, your behavior will add or detract from the relationship. So whatever you're doing, is it adding to the relationship? Then yeah, it's probably within those lines of etiquette. So it sort of sets of rules, ground rules for how to behave in Atlantic Canada. So then I mentioned ethics. So this is a great one from, I always give credit, so PediaA.com, which is kind of interesting website. But in terms of ethics versus etiquette, what's the difference? So when you think about ethics, some people think about someone says, well, that's not appropriate. And someone else says, well, actually, that is appropriate. That's probably a personal preference. It relates to who we are, our own values that we hold that may be uniquely different than someone else. They've got here related to principles that we stand behind. It could be around being on time, as an example. Generally, there are some etiquette things there we'll talk about, but some people are more uptight about that than others, shall we say. I'm one of those. I hate to be late for anything. But it's personal, right? Ethics are personal. Generally, though, in the norm of Atlantic Canada, if we think of etiquette, 99% of the people would agree that something might be inappropriate. Okay, so that's where the variation is. It's something around how we work, how we are, and of course, we're all uniquely different. But again, the standards that are within the business environment. And I think the key here is we're going to adapt. We've talked about it in many sessions before. We're going to adapt. We're going to modify our behavior for specific needs of a client, specific needs of a coworker, but these are some standards. And in putting this together, because I don't put this all together in this way very often, it was really interesting to see because, again, I'm sure I have gone over the boundaries on some of these as well. And again, how do you deal with that? What happens when we go over the line? What do we need to do about it? So we'll talk about that in the next session at the end. All right, so what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about making a positive impression in general. What does that look like? How about on the phone, in the office? So just general things in the office, in meetings, because I find when often people go over the line or can leave a lasting bad impression, often you can see those in meetings. We may get through meetings today, and then next time we're going to get more into the technology side. So on email communications, it could be, we'll include Skype in there. What about your smartphone? How does it work with technology? How does it work with technology with young people these days? Like, what does that look like these days? What is proper? And a lot of us are getting pushed in terms of what that looks like. So let's talk about what the standards, and I'll throw in what I see as well as, but at the end of the day, we're all experts in this one. Okay, there's just no one here on this call I can say that is a true expert in this type of stuff. Okay, it's all sort of on the edge for many of us. And when in doubt, I'm going to throw in some stuff at the end in the next webinar portion around when you're not sure what to do, or here's some standard things that I would see that go off the rails. So maybe just a little add-on that might make you think a little differently. All right, so the why. Why in the world do we care about any of this? So what's a CLM? If you look at the upper left, prevent a CLM. Anybody know what a CLM is? If it is, just write it in the chat. Everyone's stuck on CLM. There we go. Thanks, Petra. Career limiting move. Absolutely. So here's the thing. We make impressions. We make them very quickly, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's incredible the impressions people have of us, whether they are real or not. We cannot control how someone sees us, but we can certainly influence it. So, career limiting move, I've absolutely seen them, and I'm sure you have over the years. And sometimes the only way to get out of it in the organization, I know, sometimes people just are stigmatized and people see them a certain way, and sometimes they actually have to leave. That's an extreme scenario. But yeah, some things happen, and it becomes a career limiting move. And if the top person has an opinion of you, how do you change it? You can, but it takes a little bit of time. So people notice stuff. If say you're thinking, oh, well, that's because that person speaks too much or they speak a certain way, or it could be just as much as if you're too quiet. So again, everyone notices everything about what we do. We cannot not communicate. And what is appropriate and what is etiquette, what is really the standard of what we should be doing. Clients notice this and teams notice this. And when coming back from a faux pas is tough. So again, we all make them, and we'll talk about coming back later, but it happens. Okay, but how would we prevent it? So let's talk about some things that really stand out. You only get one chance to make that first impression, which is kind of frightening, actually. And I've talked to you guys about it before, how quickly we actually start processing information about somebody. So it's 0.9 to 1.2 seconds, an impression is made. Now, there's more than just that initial impression. It could be one small piece of that initial impression. So first impressions, we look at what's immediate, right? So you might have the immediate, I like this person, I'm not sure about this person, which is the 0.9 to 1.2 seconds, which is neuroscience has gotten it down to, and they say it could go even quicker. Within 30 seconds, you'll get a little more tangibles around economic and education level. So where's this person? How are they talking? How are they presenting themselves? Social position, things in our society, right? Sophistication, level of success, right or wrong. Not saying these are going to be correct in any way, shape, or form. And some people know this and they use this and they try to be seen a certain way, right? Create their own brand of who they are. it goes a little beyond that as well. We get into more elements too the more you talk with somebody. So essentially, I might have an impression that, hey, we're going to get along. That's positive. There may be an initial edge of trust there. We talk for 30 seconds, or we have an interaction of some sort and have a better sense of who you are, and it migrates into less than 5 minutes. You pretty well have a sense of figured out the person to some extent. So am I going to trust them? Do you think they'd actually have a sense, like if I made some really crass remark about something, ooh, wow, wouldn't want to get on their bad side, right? So compassion, intelligence, which we talked about in terms of education as much as how you come across, humility, friendliness, confidence. So all those things, as you can think about it, if you're talking, you're going into an event and you meet somebody for the first time, you can probably tell within 4 minutes of talking where you may place them. May not be accurate, but you have a sense of what that would be. A little bit scary. At the same time, it's also an opportunity. So let's get into, do they last? Sad but true. Yes, they do. So there is an element of it's hard to shift. People can shift. I've had one person actually in your industry who I used to work with who I judged wrong. I'm usually a pretty good judge. It's probably one of my superpowers. I have so many things that I struggle with, but that's one of my superpowers. And I think sometimes, though, on occasion, I'm like, wow, that person I really judged wrong. But generally speaking, they last or they linger, and oftentimes people aren't as open to change. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. So we start with how we feel about somebody, and then we work to the rational side. Does it make sense? You know, let's talk about what makes sense for my business versus do I like them or not? Do I feel comfortable with them? Do they feel like they actually want to talk to me? So the emotional side kicks in, and then the rational side kicks in. So how do you tackle that emotional side first? Rational brain seeks validation. So, hey, I think you're this way. We've talked about this before. I think you're a certain way. I'm getting an impression. I'm going to try to validate that. And sometimes we read into that in terms of how we work. So making sure you've got your P's and Q's, so the etiquette side of business in place, limits the chance that you're going to go off the rails on that first impression. So we don't want to change our opinions. We want to be right because we're human. We want to be seen as making the right impressions and also judging people the right way. We love to label people. And chances are if you met somebody and you're even a new potential client, you're probably coming back and saying, oh, yeah, they're really this way or they're really that way. Oh, I'm kind of worried about this, though. They're going to be that detail nitpicker, you know? So we do make those judgments, and then we validate them over time. So again, not to scare anybody, because but it's something that you really need to think through. And in terms of business etiquette and meeting people and making that positive impression, you've got to make sure that you strategically think about what you're doing. Sometimes we let loose, say we're off at a cocktail party for something, you know, sometimes we're just relaxed, but you really, when you're at work and it's work related, there's a little bit of being on, unless they're all your colleagues. Like say, for example, it's all people from the industry and you know them really well and you can relax. But generally speaking, if there's new people in the room, you got to kind of be on a little bit. So in terms of making first impressions, who's your audience? So I go in, it's a cocktail party, and I know everybody. Okay, I might be one person or two people that I might meet. So is that okay if I have a glass of wine or if I do whatever or kind of joke around with people? Is that okay? Then you have to really think about that. What are their expectations? Maybe some bigwigs come down from one of the companies and they're going to one of these. Then if you meet them, then do you adapt? Do you actually, does your change of approach kick in? So what do you think they want? What do you think they need if they're coming from a different geography? We all know, many of us, we have a sense of culture and how we are and the business etiquette and the way we behave and the norms of our Atlantic Canadian world is a little different, right, than it might be in Toronto. So again, how do we want to deal with that? How do we actually change our approach to be appropriate for that person? Or again, what you think that person might be. So what would be something that would resonate with them? So then also addressing, of course, you're already dressed up if you're at the cocktail party, but how do you behave and communicate in a way that they expect you to? And again, if I'm meeting somebody and they're kind of coming across as, you know, relatively friendly, doesn't have to be over the top, relatively friendly, kind of open, you're chatting with them, you know, there's no bells and whistles generally going off for people. But some of us are a little bit more certain way than others. And so sometimes we have to think about, well, what's the one thing I could do that would put people off? It could be not speaking when you should be speaking, as an example as well. All right, so the ABCs of image. So how we look, appearance. I have no problems in this industry that you guys are doing all these sorts of things, right? What you're wearing, then our behavior, what we do. So the civility, the attitude, the etiquette really plays into that, the behavior piece, and then how we communicate plays into etiquette as well, right? What we say, how we say it, our nonverbal communication. So, for example, going up, typical one would be, do you touch somebody, right? Is it appropriate for someone you don't know to just go up and touch them or kiss them or give them a hug right away? I mean, is that appropriate? Probably not right away, because again, it can make someone feel uncomfortable. So that wouldn't be a norm, I would say. Now, having said that, as in Atlantic Canada, we certainly have a sense of caring for people. So maybe next time, but maybe not the first time. So just thinking about those, how we play up in those ways. So in terms of first impressions, what suggestions do you have? So I want you to think for a minute about first impressions. You can think about it from a sense of what's worked well for you or people you know, or what also doesn't work well. And just if a few of you can put something, can you guys hear me? I've got a note there saying, does anyone have trouble hearing me? Anyone having trouble? Let me know if anyone has trouble. Okay. No, we're good. Okay. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate that. Thanks for checking, Carrie. Really appreciate that. So in terms of what suggestions do you have? Yeah, come up with a few if you can. Come up with a couple of suggestions that you have around first impressions. Take a minute and think it through. Smile is good. Imagine a lot of Canadians smiling. Can't imagine. Eye contact is another really good one. Not always comfortable for everyone, but it's really important to know that you're actually focused on them. Love that. Relaxed posture. Yes. Relaxed, but not too relaxed. I'll put out there. There's a line, but yes, I agree. Generally kind of relaxed, which makes people feel like they're welcomed, right? In the conversation. Anything else? Maybe think that's something that drives you crazy when you first meet somebody. Oh, strong handshake is good. They don't kill their hands. But yeah, nice firm one. Don't be doing, oh my goodness, don't be doing the one where just your fingers go, just barely touch someone with your fingers. Now, again, we cannot judge. There might be some people with some, some challenges from a OCD or something related to that. So again, don't judge too much. But yes, generally people want a nice firm handshake. How they're put together. There you go. So if I'm sort of all over everywhere and everything, even maybe my briefcase is flying out and everything's kind of all over, how does that make it? Generally, we want things somewhat tidy and organized in our world, right? So their name, yeah. Yeah, so using their name. Speaking about them, if you're talking to somebody, I've noticed this, I've actually picked it up myself. So if I'm talking to, Petra just said that, so if I'm talking to Don and Petra as an example, and then Rosanna comes along, it's like, oh, hey, Rosanna, not just, if someone comes into your little group to have a conversation, and they say, oh, and I know Rosanna, but the other two don't, making that introduction. It really makes a person feel welcome. So Rosanna's like, yeah, yeah, it makes me feel comfortable. I'm not just kind of standing here. But some of us don't find it comfortable meeting new people, right? So really introducing them in a positive way, or just introducing them and maybe saying it for a second around how you know them, and maybe pulling them into the conversation quickly. Really helpful, really makes people feel engaged. And I love the name thing. So we will talk about names. I'm terrible at names. It's one of my downfalls. It's something that I've found skills to get myself around that because I'm so bad with names. I don't know if anyone else is. You can put it in there in the chat, but it's one of the things that I struggle with the most. And I know my dad, who's passed on, but he knew everyone's name. He would never forget a name. It was something, it was a superpower I absolutely would love to have had. So there's lots of things that we can look at in terms of first impressions. So when do we make the intro? So when we're talking to people, when we introduce ourselves, when we go up and we actually say our name, we ask their name, etc. How do you do it, right? How do you create small talk? So what about small talk though? How many people think that that's a beneficial thing? Is that sort of standard in terms of business protocol? And if so, what would you say? Is it standard for us? Yeah. Thanks, Caitlin. I think so. I kind of agree with Caitlin. Feel free to chime in at any point during this session and the next one. I think it's really helpful to get people. Yeah, talk about the weather. Oh my God, Atlantic Canada. Oh, I don't know about you. Tell me if Nova Scotia is just as bad. So I haven't worked officially in Nova Scotia other than seeing clients in Nova Scotia. But I can honestly say in Newfoundland, it's kind of insane how much we talk about the weather. Because of the insane types of weather we have. It's always a safe topic. We'll talk about that as well in a few minutes. What are safe topics to talk about? Some people are good at small talk. Someone said, yeah, sometimes it's difficult. Some people are good at small talk, some people aren't. When in doubt with small talk, and we'll talk about it in a second, but you can always find something. Anything from the coffee, say you're at an event and you're talking about the coffee or something. I mean, it's amazing how quickly you can start a conversation if you really need to. And do you speak or do you listen? So there's the question, right? What do you think is more beneficial when you actually make that trying to make that positive first impression? Yes, Caitlin's on the ball there. Look too, and listen, Penny too. Ask questions and listen. Absolutely. And I think I mentioned this a while ago now, but on one of the skills my mom taught me many, many years ago, and they were involved in certain things which would put them with, different types of people, whether it was political or whatever. And mom would say, at the end of the day, the best people out there are the ones that ask a question and listen, because you feel connected to that person through talking about yourself. It's extraordinary, really, but it's incredible what a quick tip that is to make that positive first impression. If I go up and start talking, they're just going to be, oh, wow, she talks a lot, or she's really happy about how she turned out. So yes, absolutely. Try to start thinking about how you show up. Are you saying a little bit about yourself, of course, to have that little connection. But again, how do you actually ask the questions and listen? And yes, people love talking about themselves. Thanks, Caitlin. They love talking about themselves. If you let them, absolutely. And that's the more they talk, seriously, the more connected they feel. They may know nothing about you, but they feel a sense of connection. This person listens to me. They care about what I have to say. And even if you do respond, it's probably just carrying on with whatever they're saying or validating something they're saying. Huge tip from today's session. So small talk. So what are the safe topics? We've got weather. What else could you talk about that's a safe topic? Family's good. Yep, I think Atlantic Canada. Not everywhere, funny enough. Family isn't, but yeah, absolutely. Atlantic Canada, part of what we are. We're very family focused. Local events, excellent. Yeah, maybe there was a winter festival on the weekend. Maybe there was, Santa Claus parade or something. So how do you actually do that? And compliment, love that. I've got that coming up actually. Compliment someone on something. Now be genuine about it, of course. Like if you notice someone has I'm terrible with scarves. So if I see someone with a beautiful scarf that's tied wonderfully, I'd have someone do me up if I could, because it's not my nature to do so. You don't get to see me, but I'm never really done up to the nines or anything. But I love the scarves and things that people do. Maybe it's a hat or a pin or a jacket, like Jen said. So fair enough. So you've got weather, you've got local events, you've got family, you've got the coffee that's in front of you, or whatever it is that's in the room that day. What's not safe? So where would you not want to step? Politics, yeah. The only one, religion, yes, absolutely. Religion and politics. And there's probably one more obvious one, which I'm sure someone might come up with. If not, I'll let you know what my other one is. But politics are one of those things where you just don't know where someone lies. I remember, now it was a little different. It was at the grocery store, and there were 3 women, and it was a long wait. I don't remember why. It was around some sort of busy time of the year. And this was last year. And somebody made a comment because Trump was on the cover or something, and someone made a comment, and we were chattering about it. And the person, the cashier, said, well, actually, I disagree with that. I'm a big Trump supporter. So, really awkward, really awkward. And we were sort of like, wow, this is a really awkward time. We have to stay in this line for another 15, 20 minutes. It's kind of, we stepped on some toes. We made him feel uncomfortable. So again, it wasn't a really difficult time in terms of work related, but it's so easy to go down that path. And the world of politics is so divisive, like it divides people, especially in the world today. So definitely religion too. You got to be careful with that. You know, depending on the situation. If you're on like an 8-hour flight with somebody that you may never see again, you can certainly talk about it or ask them about theirs if it's uniquely different. But again, you're right, step away from that. The other one I want to throw out there, even though it's the business world, money. What do you think about that? Can you talk about money when you have that first small talk? Yeah, I agree with the no. I've learned that the hard way. Even if it's just a quick comment about, oh, it's so expensive to do something. Generally, it's not received well. So I don't know what parts of money you'd talk about that would make sense. Now, it certainly would be something in the world of business that we talk about through a conversation, maybe in a meeting. But in that small talk, when you're trying to create that relationship, it's usually something you want to stay away from. So, you know, it's one of those things where when in doubt, don't say it. And come up with something else. So be more interested than interesting. So again, listen, be curious about them, and honestly curious about them, and it will show. If we're not genuine, it certainly will show as well in a negative light. So just keep that in mind. So some typical things you guys came up with already, right? In terms of individuals, you get your weather, you get your food, your current events, you know, what you're wearing. I mean, these are all natural for you folks. In the group, pulling people together, I see this done really well and I see it done really poorly. Again, that person who interjected and pulled that person away, you know, it was, to me, it was a big faux pas. And it made the person, right or wrong, look very self-centered. They could have had the worst day and they were trying to figure something out, but it just did not come across in a positive way. So when you're trying to pull people together, how do you all know each other? I did that at a conference, actually, oil and gas conference. You know, there were these, you know, 5 or 6 men just standing there, and I just, 5'1" I am, went over and said, hey, you know, so you guys obviously know each other. You guys from the same company or no? And then all of a sudden the conversation started. So it could be simple around travel if it's a summertime, or one thing be careful with as well is family. Don't assume people all have children, or don't assume people don't have children, or they have young children or old children. So you kind of have to absolutely talk about family, but don't assume. Right? Don't make assumptions around those sorts of things or make comments about those things unless you know for sure. So, and yeah, casual acquaintances, just, yeah, how's it been going? How's it over there at that firm? Right? How's that happening? And amazing. And then you listen and you can pull on the conversation from there. Now, in terms of telephone manners, so there's so many. So answering the phone, simply, I know it's, and we'll talk more about cell phones next time, but if phone in general, make sure you answer with your name, right? I find sometimes with smartphones, if somebody gives me their phone number, or I texted them and then I just called them because something was really urgent, sometimes they'll just say hello. Because oftentimes cell phones are personal and professional. So when in doubt, if you don't know the number, make sure you say your name. Whether you say your company or not, just make sure you say your name for sure. Another thing, here's a thing that you guys might appreciate. So so at KBRS, we are sort of a full service firm, and one side of it, which most people would know us for, is recruitment. So we've got our executive recruiter, and recruiters, I should say, and there's quite a number in Halifax as well. So they would have people on their team that would call to book meetings or call people for interviews. So this could be, you know, a very senior executive. They're calling to book something, set up a Skype meeting, whatever it is. But I can tell you, sometimes people don't treat them as well because they're not the top dog, right? So be friendly to all. Treat everyone that way because it does land. And when it's really extreme, you know, there's talk about clients. You know what I'm talking about with clients. Certain clients, everyone's like, wow, that person. Well, you don't want to be that person people are talking about. State the purpose, speaker phones. Here's another big one. In terms of, unless you know it's coming, don't put someone on speaker until they're ready, or say right away, by the way, oh, hi, Heather, you're now on speaker with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. Generally speaking, you want to make sure the person knows. Because the worst thing you can say is something personal about the person, like something about their kid or something, oh, wow, it was great to see you at the party last night. And the person doesn't know that there's 5 other people there. Okay, so that's one thing I run into a lot. And I find, unless they say in an invite that it is a conference call, I think it should go, ideally, have it on just the call itself if possible, or to let the person know in advance. Please and thank yous, never go astray. Yeah, our parents told us that for a reason. And so essentially, like, yeah, especially if you're talking with someone's admin assistant or someone at the front desk, right? It goes a long way. They have good impressions. It gets talked about. Make sure you know your audience. Return calls. Oh, I'm terrible. Anyone really good at their voicemail, checking their voicemails? Luckily, it comes now to email, which is great. But there's so many different phones we have these days. So returning calls when you can. If you're blocked up in meetings all day, how do you make that happen? I've had some executives I've worked with. They're very lucky to have their own assistants. And sometimes the assistant will call and say he's been tied up all day or she's been tied up all day, but she's going to get back to you, or send an email. Because it's really, it makes you feel bad. And I've had clients that I've left hanging for a day or two because I didn't get the message or whatever, and I feel completely mortified. And you can only apologize so much. Here's the thing with the voicemail. So do you say on your voicemail, how many people here, is there anyone here that changes it daily? Anyone change their voicemail daily in terms of if they're in the office? Oh, God, love you, Susan. Because that's incredibly organized, and it's incredibly valuable, I think. I don't. It's something even putting this together, I'm like, yeah, I really should be doing that more often. I'm getting in the habit of it. Even as soon as you wake up, just call it in and let people know if you're available or not. Because I could be in sessions all day. So, and that could be 2 or 3 times a week. So absolutely, I think it's a great way to make people feel like, wow, they really care about my call. I know I'm going to have a delay. And then ideally, if it's urgent, call 0 or contact this particular person. Nice one is a person, but if not, that's fine. And when you're tied up, what do you do? So sometimes I've been just texting. I know there's a call that came through. I have no idea what it is because it came through on email, and I have a second in between. So I'll just say, I don't know. I saw the number come through. I'm tied up. But again, I'm not as good at that. So I'm telling you, you guys are going to be better at some of this stuff than me for sure. So, sorry, getting a little fancy with my stuff there. So in terms of office etiquette, again, let me know if any of this stuff is landing wrong with any of you. This is one that is pretty common these days. And the more stress we get in a team or things that are afoot in terms of change, then oftentimes you'll get people. So it can really get a person a bad name. Some of us are doing it because we just want to talk and we're stressed out. Really be understanding of who you're talking to. Is it appropriate? If you're a leader, don't be gossiping with your team. Don't be saying anything inadvertently you shouldn't. So again, what does that look like? In the scheme of bullying and harassment, believe it or not, gossip and saying something about somebody can be perceived as bullying. So it's gotten to a whole other level of just, watch that. And ideally, everyone needs to talk sometimes. Who's the safe person for you to talk to in the office? If you have HR, that's great. If you have a leader that mentors you, that's great. Who can you talk to about something? Again, a lot of it's out of caring. A lot of it's like, wow, did you see so-and-so this morning? Right? Wow, they seem to be got off the wrong side of the bed, right? So just be careful when you fall into that. And if someone starts gossiping, how do you cut it off? And that's where etiquette is getting to a whole new level. Okay, so I just want to really highlight that one. I give feedback quickly and professionally. So again, it's becoming more common. Like, well, why didn't you tell me? Right? Common practice. You should be telling people, giving them the feedback, what they need to do. Don't go over your supervisor's head. Now, that's a tough one. I see that happening. I see that causing conflict. It's a standard from an etiquette norm perspective, I would think. Again, unless you tell me anything different. Going over a supervisor's head is generally a no-no. Now, if it's with regard to harassment or bullying, absolutely, you can go overhead. If it's regard to my boss won't listen to me, you got to be very, very careful. Because again, other people, other leaders will hear about that. And is that a career-limiting move? I've seen that be something very successfully done in the right way, and I've also seen it done where it is a career-limiting move. So really think through when you can go over someone's head, and if you can think of anything beyond, so the topic, right? So what is the topic? What is it that you're going overhead about? If it's something where you think it's an ethical thing, if it's something harassing, if it's something where, wow, that is going to just blow up in our faces, and I really need to let someone know. Just think it through. Like, is this altering the organization? Is your boss the one who's causing some problems and you just want to tell someone? Think about, if you do, think about who you need to talk to, who's a safe place to talk to the person, and make sure you know where the information's going. Okay? So if you say, look, I'm doing this because I really care about the company, and I think we're going a little off track here, or I really care about the team, and our leader so-and-so seems a little off, and I think it's really stressing the team out. Again, no harm, no foul. It's just how you do it, how it's communicated, and where's the information going. So think about that one for sure. And we've all been in a situation in our career, and if you haven't, you will be, where you really want to go beyond your supervisor, your immediate person that you report to. Dress attire. This is really funny. I still get a lot of comments, funny enough. Obviously, the world of etiquette in terms of what we wear is changing. So I've got suits. I haven't worn an actual suit in a while. I don't even wear blazers as much as I used to. If I'm presenting, maybe depending on the audience, if I'm with a blue collar group, right? I'm certainly not going to dress up all fancy dancy, right? Meet the audience needs or the other person's needs. But again, what's appropriate for you? And I've got it here a couple times, is when in doubt, dress up, dress a little bit more than you would, because it's just how people view you. It's a natural thing to think about in terms of etiquette. And again, I talked about before, treat everyone with respect. And respect is, again, same respect, right? So if I'm going to say my pleases and thank yous to somebody, then hey, maybe I should do that to all the team, right? Again, when someone bigwig comes in, say one of the big people in one of the companies comes in, and this is the vice president, I don't know, of one of the travelers or somebody, then coming in, then yeah, maybe you're a little bit more up there in terms of watching your P's and Q's, as my mom used to say, in terms of pleases and thank yous and how you present yourself. But generally, yeah, people will notice if you don't treat people appropriately. So close off conversations. So just like the one where someone got interjected with that conversation we were having and pulled someone off, you can actually, if I really needed you and there's 3 people standing there chatting, or 2 people chatting, or even in their office or their cubicle, right? How do you interject yourself, but how do you actually help close off the other one as well? If I'm the person, you're coming into my office, and the other person, I could just hang on a second now, Sarah, right there, and I close off my conversation with one before I start to talk to somebody else. Sometimes you can't, but generally try to make it feel like it's come to a natural end and it's respectful. It's so easy in our crazy world just to jump from here and jump to there. If you found you've done that, you could certainly go back to the person. I'm so sorry, I was in a rush. I just, I shouldn't have done it that quickly. But, I really appreciated our conversation, or can we continue the conversation again? So really think about how you close off those conversations. And again, interjecting yourself into those conversations. So cubicle etiquette. Okay, we'll get through this, I think. So how many other people here, is there anyone here that isn't in an environment with cubicles? Does everyone have some type of cubicles? I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty common phenomenon. Oh, some people just have offices. Okay, well, some of this will play into that as well. So think about, it does play into offices as well. So again, if you don't have it, there's probably someone at reception you could think about. I can't imagine your receptionist is in an office. So think about open spaces, more open spaces. And again, right, some people, even with an office, these will apply. All right, so my cut off here, so I'm just going to pull over. Okay, so here we go. So in terms of, thou shalt not enter another person's cubicle or office unless invited. So how many people just, I got to go in and talk to Mary. I'm just going to barge in and talk to Mary in the cubicle or in the office, right? Yeah, I love Penny. Penny's got a door that closes. Yes, you're very lucky to have a door that closes. I think a lot of people in the industry don't, actually. There's lots of cubicle environments out there, and they're becoming more and more common, and I've actually seen it occur in some respectful workplace incidents because there's no sense of privacy. So, yes, doors that close can be handy. So if, again, here's another one, someone knocks on your door. Do they knock on the door? Or do they just open your door? Right? So I'm going to be, if I'm in with somebody and someone just opens my door and I'm in a coaching conversation, not really appropriate. So again, how do they enter? How does that look? Right? And when in doubt, I think most people would expect at least a knock and not just coming in. So tell me, is that something personal, do you think? Or do you think that's a standard? So a colleague just coming into someone else's office. Yeah, okay. So it is pretty standard. Thanks for that. So again, think about it. Even if you need someone desperately, how do you do it in a professional way? So this is a funny one. You ever been in your office and somebody will come up and they'll just go, I need you, and they're waving or they're pointing to their watch or something like that? What does that do though? Oh yes, his back is turned. Nice. Thanks, Dana. So what would you do? It is disruptive. I think it's disruptive. I'm highly distractible. Yeah. Thanks, Tracy. It definitely distracts you from your conversation, what you're doing, train of thought. It's incredible how distracting it is. Now, sometimes it's just essential. Sometimes something's happening where you need to be interrupted. But in general, like basically saying, yeah, come in when you're done with your call, it can really get you off track. Now, maybe not. Maybe you're the person who can manage that. Generally, though, I would like to think that it's pretty standard in terms of how we want to be, right? This is definitely an etiquette thing. If someone was coming into Atlantic Canada and they were just barging into offices, I think someone would probably tell them it wasn't appropriate, or barging in. Cubicles are challenging. So think about cubicles because there's a wide open space. And if you actually see the picture on the left there, see how low those walls are. That's the standard these days. So if you ever are in an environment, or if you have them with cubicles, those big tall walls are actually not what people are doing these days. They're doing these lower level walls where sound travels. So oftentimes I've said to employers, okay, you're doing a reno, or you're putting in, low level cubicles. And I say, you've got to have white noise machines because you can hear everything. You can see everything. And for people that are visually distractible, it's even worse when you've got sound coming at you at the same time. So, it can be done very well, but it can be very challenging. Yeah, so if someone's deep in thought, just think twice about it. How your voice projects. I am generally loud, which is why I laugh when Carrie said, I can't hear very well. It's not usually the problem for me. And if the mic doesn't work wherever I'm talking, it's usually not an issue. But a lot of us have that. So if you're a bit louder, it can come across the wrong way. It can certainly lead to a negative impression. I think the key here, and especially with clients, I think with colleagues, it's if you're very aware of that and you can say, look, by all means, if I'm ever too loud, just let me know. Like sometimes if I'm down the hallway and I'm talking to someone in the hallway and there's some meeting going on, someone will just go, that's so loud. No harm, no foul. Happy for it, because that is proper etiquette, right? How that projects and how it travels. And plus what's confidential as well that you could be talking about that people are hearing. Okay, so speakerphones and cubicles, yes, or speakerphones in your offices. Those of you with offices and the speakerphones on, sometimes our walls aren't that thin. So if I've got, say for example, you're listening to me now and it's really loud and you've got someone next door, my voice might be driving them crazy right now. So again, how do you think about your speakerphone? Think about how loud something is. It just doesn't mix. So if you're going to go on speakerphone, really think about it and make sure that it's the right people are around that aren't going to be bothered by it. And of course, confidential matters, even in the office, right? How do you make sure? It's incredible how our voices carry and how things can be heard. And here's the other thing, whispering. So I might not be able to hear what you're saying, but is it proper etiquette? So there's a question. What do you guys think? Oh, sorry, Rosanna. What about coworkers who talk to themselves all day? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. My colleague Mel's right next to me, and she talks to herself, and so do I. So we're actually perfectly suited next to each other. Yes, whispering. Yes, don't whisper. If you need to talk about something quietly, close an office door, go somewhere separate, because, you know, even if you're in your, like, again, sometimes you might need to keep your voice down because it's something confidential. It's something that, you know, gosh, you know, Sarah, I've got to give constructive feedback to somebody, and can I talk it through with you? Yeah, you don't want the whole office hearing that. So, but plan it out, talking to an office, in an office. Don't be whispering, because it gets everyone paranoid. And it really makes people wonder what's happening. And if you want to have a respectful workplace, it's certainly not something that's going to help. All right, we're over time already. So what we're going to do, it's amazing how time flies. So we're going to get into this etiquette, more office space etiquette. We'll finish that up. We're going to talk about meeting etiquette as well, and we'll talk about communications, telephones, voicemails, Skype, and all that sort of stuff. So thanks for your comments, because I think this is something that we all need to discuss in terms of where etiquette is and where ethics, you know, my own perspective is, because I'm challenged with some of this. When I put it on, I was like, oh, is that more me, or is that something that's standard? So please let me know next time as well. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks. We'll finish this up, and then we have Christmas, which is amazing. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.